Okay, folks, we're getting set up here. I think this stream is gonna work this time a little better than last time. Maybe. We'll see if the chat actually functions. Because last time it didn't, and that wasn't good. Apparently Instagram's not working, so that's cool. I think Substack will work now when I start it. So if you're joining in the chat, nice. Okay, the chat is working. This is good. Thanks, Alan Broke It, for letting me know. Last time was a nightmare. And I actually had a big thing going with Restream. I reached out to their support, and they had some reasons for some things and other things not so much, and I was pretty disappointed. Um, so, for example, like today, the same thing is happening with Instagram when I try to stream to Instagram. It's like, nope, just not working. And I'm gonna try again, and we'll see if it works. But the chat was the most annoying part, and I am Derek. Thanks for joining from Twitter and letting me know, because last time I went a few minutes in, and I was like, "There's no one in the chat. There's no one in the chat. This is so weird." There were people in the chat. It just wasn't coming through. So I actually turned on the chat. I'm pointing to my other screen, but I turned on the chat and I could see it like in the stream, but the window that I have to actually be able to engage in the chat wasn't showing anything. And so their tech support was like, yeah, we don't know what that is. Like, there's no sign of any, I don't know, anything going wrong. And I'm like, well, you can literally watch the video because it's recorded and you can see it. So anyway, I think we're doing better this time. And it looks like, yeah, looks like everything's going. So thanks for joining me. For folks that are new to these live streams, I generally go through my newsletter topic. I'm going to link it in the chat. It's just at weekly.devleader.ca, and I always give the disclaimer, and thanks for folks for joining on Substack. I always give the disclaimer, like, I realize newsletters are not for everyone. Don't subscribe to it if you don't want to read it. That's totally cool. It's just that that's the topic that I usually use for my live streams. So if you're ever curious about what it's going to be, it's just at weekly.devleader.ca. It goes out on Saturdays. There's a link to it. And if you're like, dude, newsletters absolutely suck, I don't want to subscribe to it, if you just want to know what the topic is, then check it out on a Saturday, Sunday, or Monday during the day, and you'll have some idea what the topic's going to be. But the other thing that I'll mention is that while that's a proposed topic for the live stream, the chat's there for a reason. I would honestly much rather spend the entire time answering questions in chat. I mentioned to people before, like, I make a lot of YouTube videos, right? So instead I could be recording a YouTube video that's all, pre-scripted and whatever, but I would much rather just like take the time to answer questions and have engaging conversations. So as I'm going through the content for today, if you're like, I got a question related to software engineering and it has literally nothing to do with what's being talked about, just ask. Like, it's totally cool. Like I said, I'd much rather do that. So you'll also notice I ramble a lot. So welcome. Happy that you're here. And maybe let's kick things off. So for folks, if you are in the chat, come say hi. I know there's people that drop in weekly, which is super cool. And otherwise, I'm going to jump into the topic for today. So the topic is called Senior Developer Means Coding Less. And it's a question, right? So this question is something that I covered on my other YouTube channel called Code Commute. I will talk a little bit about that later. Hello, your username is just headphones from Twitter. Good to see you here. We'll call you headphones. But yeah, I talked about this on Code Commute last week, and it was the usually I pick the most, like, I don't know, the video that was either watched the most or had the most sort of conversation around it. Seemed like it gained the most interest. And this time around, it was about this topic of senior developers coding less and kind of what expectations might look like for people doing that. Hello, Cecil. How's it going? Congrats on the Dome Train courses. Thank you so much. It's going I don't know. I would say right now it's pretty rough. To be honest, if you, I realize that this comes through a lot more on my code commute videos because it's a vlog, right? And sometimes I do 4 of them in a day, and I've had to catch myself where I go to record, and I'm like, by the way, I'm in a pretty terrible mood. So I did the same thing when I was leaving work today. I started recording a vlog entry, and I was like, I got about an hour to get home, which is ample time usually. And I realized, though, as I was starting to record, I had to say it in the video, like I'm in a bad mood, like probably one of the worst moods I've been in a while. Hopefully it's not coming through. I don't want to get too ranty or anything like that. Hello, Hammer88. Um, but yeah, this topic, senior developer means coding less, was something that I talked about on Code Commute. And I think it's because it came up on Reddit. So on Code Commute, generally what I'll do is I will. Oh, BJ on TikTok saying, I listen to Code Commute while I commute almost every day. That's so cool. Thank you so much. Sometimes people will say like they either watch it on their commute or like while they're cleaning their house and stuff. So I've started uploading all those videos to Spotify. I think I'm 30 videos into 170. So I got a lot more to go. Man, terrible mood too. Down to argue if you want. No, I don't. I don't want to argue, man. It's I have no energy for it. But yeah. Usually on Code Commute, what I will do is people will either submit questions or they'll write them in the comments related to software engineering, career growth, stuff like that. Um, the traffic noises are sometimes confusing, is what BJ's saying on TikTok. The TikTok chat doesn't get shared, by the way, so I'm just kind of reading it out. Yeah, traffic. Yeah, it's or I'll be shouting at traffic and stuff. But if I don't have like active comments that I haven't responded to or messages I haven't responded to, I will go to Reddit and pick a topic generally. So usually I'll check out like experienced devs, the subreddit. Sometimes I'll venture just to software engineering or CS career questions. But CS career questions on Reddit is kind of just like everyone freaking out about AI. And I'm like, I don't know how many videos I can make on it without going nuts myself. So generally I go to experienced devs, and this is one of the topics that came up where someone was saying, hey, look, like, I feel like as a senior developer, I might be stagnating. I was like, okay, this is interesting. Where is this going, right? So they were saying that they find, they had a really interesting way to frame it. They said, I find I'm spending more time, oh, I'm going to forget how they said it. Almost like being like, find I'm spending more time being like a representative for my team, right? Like I am kind of like pitching what my team does to other people, not quite like a salesperson, but kind of like, you know, the person who is the face of the team to other teams or other stakeholders, having to talk about the importance or significance of their team, what the team's work is. And they were saying, like, I do a lot of this stuff, and they were mentioning some other things, and they're saying, but like, I feel like I'm coding less. And I was like, okay, this is probably an interesting topic to go into, because this is probably something that a lot of people are going to experience. And one day I would love to say this is sponsored by Pepsi, but it's not. I'm just thirsty. I've been talking a lot today. So, coordinator. Yeah, coordinator might be a good word for that. They had a good ambassador. I think ambassador was the word they used. So I said, I feel like I'm my team's ambassador, and I'm spending more time doing that. So I figured, okay, this might be good to write about and to chat through, because I think a lot of people will go through this, and it's part of career growth as a software engineer, where there's going to be different things that come up that aren't just coding. Now, something that's important to kind of talk through, like I'm going to give you some perspective on things from my experience, and if you've watched my videos and stuff before, evangelizing is another good word. So Alan broke it, is kind of hinting at what the at what the majority of my talk is going to be about, right? But I always try to make this kind of stuff clear, that the reality is that depending on where you're working, right? Depending where you're working, things are going to look different. So I might be talking about things from my experience, my perspective, and you will say like, hey, like I am a senior developer, and literally what you're saying is completely different than what I've experienced. So when I talk through this kind of stuff, and generally in all of my videos, I'm trying to give you some perspective, but I'm not here to tell you like this is the only way kind of thing, because I don't think that that's a good way to approach anything. So it's I hope it's like implicit when I'm talking, but I try to add the disclaimer in because I think it's important to call out. So Alan in the chat is saying the more senior the role, the more team management and evangelizing you have to do, and the more time you wind up working with spreadsheets. Yeah. Excel is the way of the future. Yeah, but the reality is that, okay, what's a good way to frame this? So it's not that your technical skills stop mattering. It's not that you stop coding the more and more senior you get, nothing like that. But there starts to be other sets of expectations and responsibilities that you're going to be doing the more senior you become. And just to give you like a very brief example, right? And this doesn't happen like late in your career, but the first time that you are responsible for leading a project, okay? And this could look different depending where you are, the project that you're leading, all this kind of stuff. But let's say that even the first project you lead, maybe it's very small, but you're responsible for it. And maybe you're partnering up with someone else on it, right? But the expectations of responsibility fall on you. And maybe you get this even as a junior developer, or, junior to mid-level. So you're not a senior engineer, you're not principal, you're certainly not like responsible for managing teams. And the first project you get like this, automatically, there's going to be some new, interesting responsibilities that you probably have to do that aren't just coding that you didn't have to do before. And one such thing is just like, who are the stakeholders for your project and what kind of status are you going to be providing them? Right? So even right there with the most simple example is just like, there starts to be other stuff that you end up doing that isn't just coding. Now, if we keep going down this path and the more senior you're becoming, and this is where really the newsletter content comes into play, I tried to just write out a bunch of different examples for things that you'll be spending time doing that aren't just writing code. And I figured because it's a live stream, if folks want to write in the chat as we're going through this, like, if you either are more senior or you're kind of speculating about stuff that's going on for people that are at senior levels and such, like, I want to talk through different things that you end up having to do that aren't just, putting your headphones on and writing code. Now, before I get into those things, I just want to be very clear that, yes, you will be writing code as a senior developer. Like I said, that doesn't just go away. There is an expectation that your technical skills continue to grow. There's going to very likely, I can't see this going a different way right now, there's very likely going to be an expectation that you're still contributing to the code base in a significant way, right? Sometimes this might change for people like in an architect position where they're actually spending a little bit less time actually writing code. But as a senior developer, certainly you will be spending time writing code. The point of all of this, and this is really the meta point and the takeaway of the whole live stream, so if you want to hang up after I say this, I get it. But the idea is that there's going to be other responsibilities you have, and it's not like you were given more time. So the other responsibilities you have will start to take away from some of the time that you have to code. So that's the meta principle. If I check in the chat, Hammer88 says, I think I spend a lot of time correcting junior work. Okay. Now, what are things that you could be doing to help the juniors so that you don't have to be correcting their work, right? This is something that I would say you should be, investing time into helping. And, one of my things in my newsletter is going to be around mentorship. So maybe we can start with that. In all of my experiences, I've found that, and I'm saying my experiences, I'm sure there are other places that might weigh these things differently, but in all of my experiences, there's an expectation of more senior developers mentoring more junior ones. And this can happen early on, right? So even at a junior level, you might have the opportunity where there's someone new onboarding, and you are helping them, you're giving them some mentorship. You could be mid-level, and there could be a senior that joins the team and you're helping them on board and stuff. Like there's no like limit to where you're able to try and help mentor and help others. It's not restricted to just titles or levels or something like that. But the reality is that as you become more senior, in every place I've ever seen, the expectation goes up around your ability to mentor others that are more junior than you. Okay. And like I said, some places they will weigh this more and they'll say, hey, like, part of demonstrating that you are becoming senior, like we need to see more of that from you. So if you're just trying to like avoid this and, kind of just silo yourself to being able to get your head down and work on things, like at some point that will stop flying at some places. And in other places, they'll say, hey, you know what? Most of the people on the team are doing that in terms of helping and mentoring. And if like you're not spending as much time doing that, that's okay. I just feel like that's a rare thing that I've seen kind of come up. It's almost like the exception to it. So primarily expectation, the more senior, the more opportunity you have to be mentoring others that are more junior. Now, mentoring means that you're going to be spending time doing that. Where does that time come from? Probably the time that you had set aside previously to be coding things, right? So this is one example where, yes, there's going to be less time coding because part of that time is carved out for mentoring. For folks that are in the chat, maybe a question to you is like, what are your experiences like mentoring others, right? Do you find that this is something that you enjoy? Because I think people are divided on this. Some people I've talked to are like, hey, any opportunity I can, it feels good to be able to help other people. Some folks will say it's distracting, right? Like I'm not saying this is right or wrong. Like it's a feeling that you're allowed to feel whatever you'd like. But some people will say they feel that they don't get enough focus time, right? Like I would love to be able to focus more on coding for my own deliverables, but it feels very distracting, or it feels like it's a lot of effort to have to mentor and help others. So I'd be curious in the chat if you have different experiences around this, because that's something that we could try and talk through. And like I said, there's not like there's a wrong answer. I've heard a bunch of different things. My phone is saying my internet connection is unstable. So hopefully it's not. Everything else seems to be coming through pretty clear. I'm literally streaming myself and it seems to be okay. Just not the audio. So but yeah, if you're in the chat, would love to hear if you have different experiences with mentoring people, how that looks for you. I know that early on in my career, and I was not, it's a little bit weird for me. Early on in my career, I became a manager. So it's not like I was a senior engineer or something right when I started working, but a few months into working, I was managing a growing team at a startup. And so mentoring became part of what I was doing. And I can say with confidence that like, I recall that feeling very taxing. I remember thinking like, I don't have time to do anything. I can remember thinking, and it was a startup and I was younger and I didn't have other responsibilities. It got to the point where I was trying to, in my mind, I was mentoring or helping others. But the way that I had to get my work done was I would start work early. And then I would, work during the day, which was just helping people all day. And then I would work late. And that was the only way that I felt I could get my work done. So to me, it felt like very much like a pain in the ass, to be honest. It was like, I understand I got to help people and it's important, but I'm like, when do I get my stuff done? I'm just going to read the chat before I kind of go back to this thought though. So mentorship is like investing in long-term growth. I usually see it as an opportunity to be a multiplier. This is from Alan. It's just another example of scaling. Yes, exactly. And Vengeance, hi, how are you? Pretty stressed out, but we're here doing this, so it's a good spot to be. But yeah, I think Alan's spot on, right? So if I take the example I had where I was saying, it felt frustrating, right? It felt frustrating to help other people. I can't get my own stuff done. I'm falling behind. I'm working more. I realized because I'm using the word mentor here, and that's not what I was doing. And in fact, it wasn't even helping other people solve problems. What I was doing was giving people answers. And this is not a scalable thing. In fact, the video I filmed today for Code Commute on the way to work, spoiler alert because it's not posted yet, but that video I talked about this being a problem. And I've talked about this in other videos too. I was talking about the idea that in terms of building respect and trust and accountability and things like that, that when you become sort of like an expert in an area or someone that people come to for help and questions, like that's a good thing, right? There's nothing wrong with that. That can be a great spot to be in because it's demonstrating that you have some expertise in an area that people they do trust and they do respect your opinion. Those are good things. But I was saying that depending on how you navigate that kind of stuff, you can become the limiting factor. And what I meant when I recorded that today was that if how you're approaching that is people come to you with questions and you basically solve the problem for them, then you become the limiting factor because your ability to have impact is just your time. Right? So one person comes to you, okay, that's consuming your time when you're basically doing the work for them to give them the answer. Now you have two people that come to you and now your time is, taken up more and more until you have enough people that come to you, and this is what happened to me, where you don't have any other time for work. So what Alan was saying in the chat is like, it's just an example of scaling. And he's right, because what I wasn't doing was helping scale. I was just giving answers. And I can remember people be like, hey, can you help me with this? And I would walk over to their desk. This is when we weren't working remotely. And it's like, hey, like, let me slide into the keyboard. Here's how you do it. No, here's how you don't do it. What I highly recommend, and this is recorded as well. So if you're not in the chat to talk about it, for people that are watching this or listening right now, is like, if you find that you're in this kind of position where you're trying to be helpful, but it feels like you're constantly like the person trying to give help and you're it starts to be kind of taxing. It starts to get annoying and you're like, why does it keep happening? Like, you might be the problem, even though you're the one trying to help. So I would change it a little bit, right? You can help people by not just giving them answers. In fact, it's more helpful. It doesn't feel like it in the short term, but it's more helpful if you teach them, right? Explain to them. So if you're the expert in debugging something, right? Every time there's an issue in this part of the code or this class of issue, people come to you and they're like, Alan is the expert on this. We know if we go talk to Alan about this, like, we got it covered. He's so good at it. So we're going to go to Alan, and then Alan goes, no problem. I am the expert on this. This is literally what I do all day because people come to me asking questions. And then Alan disappears for a second, then comes back and says, aha, here is the answer for you. And we all cheer and we go, thank you so much, Alan. You saved us. Woo. And then 5 minutes later, the next person goes, we need Alan to debug this. Instead of Alan constantly, hello, Aaron. Instead of Alan constantly being in this position where he's just giving answers, what actually helps Alan scale here, and this is the recommendation, is like, you teach other people how they can do that for themselves. So the next person to go to Alan, instead of saying, let me go away and come back and give you the answer, if instead Alan said, hey, look, these are the tools that I use, so make sure you have access to them. And here's, maybe a wiki page or some other documentation. And then here's a direction, right? Here's a direction that you could start to look in. It might not be in the short term what feels like the most effective thing, because maybe they come back to you and they still need help. But if you start teaching other people the things that you're doing, this is how you scale. You don't become the single point of failure anymore. The amount of impact you have is not limited to just purely how much time you are dedicating to that one thing. You're helping others become better because you're teaching them how to do it, right? You're not just giving them answers. So this is, you know, one part of helping. It's not the whole story for mentoring, but this is a recommendation I have in terms of like helping yourself scale. Beyond just, you know, providing help and stuff, when it comes to mentoring, there's a lot more. I would say like one of the big things that I would recommend to people is like making space to listen. I think that especially as software developers, we have in our mind like, I don't blame people for this, but it's like we love to solve problems. I've joked about this on stream, so I'll kind of tell the story. But you know, we love to solve problems when people tell us about problems. I got to be careful because this is about my wife. My door's closed, so don't tell her. She doesn't watch my videos. But my wife has a background in psychology, and she works as a therapist, so she knows what's up much better than I do. And there are times where she'll be, I don't know if I'd call it venting. Maybe venting's too strong a word. She's telling me about something, and I'm listening. And so what I'm hearing her describe to me is like, it's a problem, or there's a situation that could have a resolution. So she starts talking to me about it, and instantly my head's like, okay. And then I'm waiting for a moment, and then she stops talking, and I blurt out, and I'm like, hey, have you considered that you could try doing X, Y, or Z? And she's looking at me like, what? And then she'll keep talking, and then I'll do the same thing where I jump in and I try to give her a solution, and then she'll end up saying like, look, stop. Like, I'm not talking to you because I want solutions to these things, right? I'm talking to you because I'm trying to express like my frustration about something, or, you know, I'm just trying to get something off my chest or whatever it happens to be. But my point is that I find that as software developers, because we're always focused on solving problems, always, that when it comes to mentoring others, we often, as people are explaining a situation, we're instantly like, how do I solve this? How do I solve this? And then there's an opportunity to speak, and we're like, okay, here's what you do. Here's the solution to your problem. Here's how you go solve it. Instead, when it comes to mentoring and this kind of thing, listen more and ask more questions, because it's a similar type of things. There's going to be some situations where you can jump in and, you know, give a recommendation to really unstick someone. But I find, and there's like a lot of, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of, I don't want to say evidence, a lot of theory on coaching and effective behavior patterns, where when you ask people questions, you can almost let them arrive at their own conclusions. It's kind of like rubber duck debugging almost, but like you get them to, you can guide them with your questions. So you listen to what they're saying, you ask them some questions about it, and then they can start to move things in the right direction. Right? If we're people watching this, software developers or adjacent to software development, probably very, very smart people. You can solve problems very well, most likely. So, and the people that you're mentoring can solve problems very well, most likely. So when you get people, you're asking them questions, they can end up kind of navigating these things and come up with a pretty good idea of what to go try, right? You're kind of facilitating their thinking. So I would recommend that kind of thing when it comes to mentoring. And the other point I mentioned about, you know, teaching people to solve their problems. I'm going to jump over to chat though, because there's a bunch of messages. Aaron 1206, yo, what's up? My question is, what are 3 things you want to see on an entry portfolio site? Working on yours right now. Awesome. Okay. Talking about listening, but my question is off in the dust. Have a good night, bro. See ya. Okay. Oh, you're still here? What? Dude. I have to finish my train of thought. Do you want me to answer it or no? the most disrespectful thing I've ever heard. Let me read the other question before coming back to you. I'm going to read what Alan had to say. It's better to be a catalyst of growth than a bottleneck. It's just harder and more expensive in the short term. Yeah, that's right. It feels like in the short term, it's pretty painful. So you have to use judgment about how much mentorship you can do given the context. Yeah. This is the other thing, right? You don't want to be in a position where you're giving up like your other deliverables and expectations, right? And Tayman says he probably has an answer in one of his videos. Yes, there's 170 videos alone on Code Commute, and this comes up. There's also a resume review playlist on DevLeader, and I might as well just try to pull that up, and I'll link it in the chat. Do the chat messages go to? They do go to Twitch. One sec. Where's a good spot for this? I'll pull it up. So I'm just going to get the resume review playlist, because when I talk through this, the question is about on a portfolio site. Okay, so the other thing that's important here is that when you're thinking about a portfolio site, this is the same kind of stuff you might want to call out on a resume, which is why I'm going to link the resume playlist here. So let's get that. Boom. There you go. So you can check out that playlist for some ideas. And so 3 things on a entry portfolio site. Okay, so the consideration when we talk about portfolio sites in general, people have different perspectives on this. I think some people look at it as a showcase. So you only want to show your best ever, most completed, most successful work that has millions of users and stuff. And I kind of think that's kind of a unrealistic expectation. And to be honest, like, I don't care. I think for me, on either a resume or a portfolio site, generally what I'm after, because I'm not hiring someone because they built a product and I want their product or I want their users, right? Like that doesn't help me. What I'm looking for when people have this kind of stuff on their resume, like their side projects or their portfolio site, is like, I'm mostly interested in seeing that people are trying to build things. You're trying to learn things. You're trying to practice building software, because when you're hired, you're going to be building software. It's not just, did you copy the tutorial, right? Like, I want to be able to see that you're taking things, you're trying to challenge yourself, you're trying to get better at doing them. So when it comes to what do you put on to a portfolio site, I would love to hear, like, you picked, I don't know, let's pick anything, right? You wanted to do a mobile application because you were interested in building something for iOS and Android, and you wanted to challenge yourself and do something cross-platform. So, you have this portfolio site that shows that you can download this app, and you have some explanation on there about the technology you used, why you picked it. And it's not like, I'm not going to go through that and be like, oh, that's right or wrong. I'm going through that to be like, hey, why did you go pick that? What did you learn from doing this? Because if I'm going to interview you and I have some context around, hey, you built this thing, I would love to chat through and hear why you picked Postgres as your database. Why did you pick that language? Why did you pick whatever, right? Like, I just want to understand your thought process, and I love to see that people are trying to challenge themselves and learn. Now, if you have a lot of experience, because the question was about entry level, if you have a lot of experience, you're probably not just going to be showcasing stuff that, like, is a project you just started and didn't really finish. Like, you probably have some things you've been working on for a while, and they are a little bit more polished, right? But what some of the most interesting things in software, it's not just, did I build something from scratch in like a week and like, here we go, like it's a shiny new thing. Some of the most interesting things are like, hey, I've been running this site for a while, or it's a project I've been building for a while. And then you're able to explain and talk through how it's evolved and how you've had to change the design of what's going on. How did you refactor or rewrite these parts? Because all of those things are real things that happen in software. The reality is, when you're getting a job somewhere, it's very unlikely that you get hired on and they go, great, you're going to start this new project from scratch. I mean, it happens in some places. It's pretty unlikely. You're probably going to, here's the code base. It's probably as old as you are. Have fun, right? Like having to go work in something and modify it and extend it. So I think being able to demonstrate that you have been building on things can be really helpful. Luke Skinner says, in my opinion, portfolio sites are not to show a static thing, but they can undertake the process of learning to build something. Yes. I fully agree with that. Luke says, my best portfolio sites were things I built, then rebuilt again in a different stack. Can talk about the things I learned, choices I made, why I made those choices, what I do differently. I simply cannot agree more with this. I think that is, again, from my perspective, I am not every recruiter, I'm not every hiring manager, but from my perspective, that is 100% what I want to go see. I've shared before that my first internship I ever got, I went to the University of Waterloo. We had 6 internships in our program, and the first one, and like, it's so weird how they do this because we would do 4 months of school and then a 4-month internship. So in your first couple of weeks, they're like, get your resume ready. And you're like, for what? Because I don't have anything to put on it. Like I don't have any school done. I haven't worked anywhere before. I worked at a grocery store for a little bit. I'm like, what am I going to put on my resume here? Like, this is nuts. And so you're like, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. So you start applying to these jobs because they have, because it's a co-op program, they have a portal and stuff where you can apply to these jobs. And I remember applying to one and it said, bring something for show and tell. And I was like, I don't, is that normal? I have no idea. I've never done this before. But I remember thinking, like, I've been working on this game. One of the live streams, I showed some, I don't know if I showed the video of it. I think I shared a screenshot of it. It's bad. Like, it does not look good. But I was spending so much time building this game engine for this role-playing game. It kind of looks like Pokemon. But I was spending so much time building it, and the guy said, bring something for show and tell. And I was like, hell yeah, I got this thing for show and tell. And at the time, I don't remember thinking like, oh, this is going to be embarrassing. It was like, no, man, like I code this thing every day for years. It's like 20 years old now. I haven't worked on it in a little bit, but I just remember thinking like, okay, and then brought this thing for show and tell in the interview. And I'm talking about an interview right now, not like a portfolio site, but the concept applies, right? So in the interview, the owner of this company was interviewing me, and he was like, okay, so it's a role-playing game. You can kill enemies, you can pick up items, there's an inventory system, there's a skill system. So I remember he was asking me, he's like, okay, like how do you save the game? Like what does that look like? So I was like, oh, well, I'm using like an XML file. So I'm writing, all of the game data back out into this XML, like hierarchical format. And I remember saying to him, but like, I don't know if that's actually the right thing to do. I actually think that I want to maybe go towards a database, but I'm still trying to figure out how I can properly represent the hierarchical data. And I'm I've never worked at a software company before. So at this point in time, I have lots of ideas in my head on how to do that. But at that time, I'm like, I don't know. And we had this really cool conversation where he's like, hey, no, I think you're actually using a format that's working well for you. Like, I don't see is there a performance reason why you would need to shift to that? So we had this really good conversation, and basically what he was doing was getting me to explain my thought process and problem solving. Why was I going in these different directions? Because this is the kind of thing when we're building software together, this is exactly what we're going to be doing, right? What should we do in this case? Let's go analyze these different paths, talk about them, weigh the pros and cons, and then go forward with something. So when we talk about portfolio sites and projects, personally, that's what I would recommend is exactly what Luke said in the chat. My best portfolio sites were things that I built, then rebuilt again. You can talk about the things that you learned, the choices you made, and why you made those choices, what you do differently. You can write up about that stuff. You could do a little mini blog entry right on your portfolio site. So that's my recommendation. So Aaron, sorry that it took a couple of minutes to get there. Thank you for being so patient and so gracious. Yeah, let's get back to the article. So we had talked about mentorship. That was one of the things. Something else, I think there's two other things that I called it. There's a whole bunch. I haven't seen other people mention any in the chat, by the way. So if you still want to talk about some stuff that you have to do as a senior engineer that is not just writing code, feel free to jump in with your ideas. But the next one that I had written down here was design reviews. So probably not something you're doing as a junior engineer, or much of. You might be doing them. But odds are you're probably working on pieces of, and this depends where you're working, right? You're probably dealing with work that is mostly well understood, not overly complex, right? A lot of junior roles are sort of, you're getting momentum built. So people aren't trying to put things in front of you where they're like, this is really going to screw this person up. Like they're trying to give you some things that you can start getting that momentum, understanding how you can build some autonomy for yourself, problem solve on your own, right? And then from there, once that's established, they can start giving you more complex things because now you know how to navigate the code base. Now you know how to navigate the build system and some of the infrastructure. I was talking about this in Code Commute on the way home, and I said, there's an analogy that comes to mind, but it feels kind of offensive. And the analogy is like training wheels. And I feel like saying training wheels is almost like an insult to the junior developers. But the reason that analogy comes to mind is like they're giving you a support system, right? So as a junior engineer, your team is giving you a support system because they want you to have some like success, right? They want you to build momentum, getting through work items and being able to commit things to the code base. So training wheels feels like a crappy analogy, but that's what comes to mind. But when you're doing that kind of stuff, odds are you probably don't have to write out design specs. And odds are, if there's design reviews going on, maybe you're invited to them, but you're like, I don't really know how to, the more senior engineer on the team put a design doc together. We're doing a review together, but like, I don't really know what to do here as a junior, which is fine. It's going to take learning. But as a more senior engineer, you will be spending more time doing this, right? Because part of going forward with larger scope projects is going to mean that you need to have other engineers bought into your solution. You need to be soliciting feedback about your solution or getting input so that you can have other people, help you design the solution, have their proposals put in there. This can look all sorts of different ways. But the point is that that's more time spent not coding. It's still very technical. John Simpson says, as a senior, you need to know when to stand your ground and when to collaborate and grow. Don't give in when pushed to lower standards for any reason. Yeah, so like these are things that when you're putting design reviews and stuff together, the whole point is that, you need to be trying to arrive at, let's say the best solution. And that's a pretty general thing to say. The best solution is not necessarily the solution that you came up with, which is an important distinction. When you're doing design reviews, it's not, I'm here to prove that I am right at all costs. The point of a design review is we are coming up with the best solution. And you're starting with probably some ideas that you've put together that you think are the best based on your analysis. But that's why you're getting them reviewed. It's not so that you can go steamroll everyone else and say, aha, this is my forum where I tell you that I am the best and you must bow down to me. No, it's a forum where you can get the feedback about things that you might have missed. Maybe there's entirely different approaches, right? It's not just about you being right. It's about coming up with the best solution. Now, when we talk about best solution, there's going to be other constraints, right? Sometimes there is a time constraint, and it means that you need a solution that will work in a given period of time. And maybe that means that something else has to come later. We need a stepping stone. It's impossible for me to generalize this whole thing in a couple of sentences, right? But the goal of your design reviews is so that you're coming up with the best solution, not just to be right. But this is effectively going to be something that takes time. You will spend time, researching options. You'll spend time collecting data. You'll spend time putting the actual document together if it's a design doc. You'll spend time doing reviews. Maybe that's asynchronously. You might not be the person putting the doc together. You're reviewing someone else's. Then there's going to be often meetings where people come together to discuss these things. Everything that I just said had nothing to do specifically with writing code. That's going to be something that you're doing. Maybe not every day, maybe not every single week, but something you're going to be doing. So, going back to the original point, like, are you coding less? By definition, if you have to be doing some stuff like this, it's going to come out of your time in your day, unless you're working more hours. And the last one that I wrote down in general, just a super high level one, is just project status meetings, right? Everyone loves meetings. Depending where you work, the amount of meetings you have will look different. Some company cultures will push back on meetings. Others are meeting heavy. I think based on everything I see online, almost everyone falls into the camp where it's over indexed on meetings, which is unfortunate. I understand that can be frustrating. But some of the reality is, even if we're not talking about a meeting where you're getting onto a call, right? So if we're imagining this right now as a project status meeting, I'm just kidding. Please don't all hang up on me. But I don't just mean getting onto a call. When we have projects that we're working on, when you are more senior, there's likely going to be more collaboration either with your teammates and or other teams, right? It means there's other stakeholders involved. It means more coordination, right? It's more coordination with the other developers you're working with. It might mean that you have project managers being involved. Maybe you haven't even been working with project managers for some of the stuff that you've been on before. Again, could look different at different companies. The point is that there's going to be other stakeholders coming into these types of things because the scale and the scope of what you're doing is greater. Now, it would be amazing if automatically, every time we were working on something, everyone just was automatically aligned, had full transparency onto everything that was going on. It just doesn't work that way. So either you have, some type of sync meeting at some cadence. Maybe there is something that's done asynchronously and people share out updates. Maybe there's a hybrid. The point is that there's going to be some amount of time spent in synchronizing. So it could look very different for everyone, but given that you're going to be working on larger projects, often you're going to be finding yourself leading projects, right? Not just being a participant, but you might be the person who's leading it. And if that's the case, you're going to have some ownership and some accountability where you need to understand the status of other people, however that looks. That might be something that takes you time. You might be the person responsible for reporting out the progress to other stakeholders. That's going to take time. There's going to be things where you're coordinating with other teams and there's things that come up that you don't agree on. Now that has to get sorted out. And maybe it's not just code related, right? So it could be, technical limitations, and now some of the deadlines and deliverables for your dependencies are being pushed around. Okay, like we have to have a conversation to sort that out. Whether you do that on your, over chat, over email, or on a call, or in person, it's time spent doing that kind of thing. Alan says in the chat, being more senior just means you've made more mistakes and have learned how to pause and think and say, well, maybe. Yeah. I think that's a really good point, right? It's, there's likely going to be more opportunity. I'm trying to be careful how I say this. There's a lot of stuff floating around where people are talking about years of experience not being, it's not a good measure. And I was like, I don't know if what I'm going to say is going to make some people mad or something, but, being more senior just means you've made more mistakes. Yeah. So it's very likely that you'll have more experiences to draw upon, but it doesn't mean that all of those experiences are necessarily equivalent or relevant. But you can draw upon those at least to say, okay, is this similar enough? Are there learnings to apply? Um, John Simpson says, sounds like you are applying to EMs. What have you been doing? Yeah, I mean, it just depends on the stakeholders, right? It's I can't generalize for everything, but the reality is that when you're working with multiple people in general, and there's other stakeholders involved, there's going to be some amount of status that needs to be communicated. If you can find tools that help you do that more automatic, then excellent. But the reality is that people, they need to understand where things are at depending on what their role is. And if you have different ways to accomplish it, that's excellent, especially if it doesn't take more time and effort or minimal time and effort. But the reality is that there's going to be some time pulled from just writing code. So those are the three major things that I wrote down just as examples, but obviously there's many more. So again, they were mentoring others, being able to spend time doing design reviews, project status in whatever format that looks like. I thought you guys were going to be all over the chat with like, oh, I have to do this. I have a couple more that come to mind. Something like, depending where you're working, maybe you have on-call duties. And sure, on-call might not be reserved only for senior engineers, but if you happen to be the subject matter expert in an area because you are more senior, sometimes even when you're not on call, you get pulled into the on-call stuff. So there's one example where you might be spending more time doing other things, helping people debug stuff. So there's plenty of examples where your responsibilities for your title are going to require you to do things that aren't coding. But to circle back to the beginning of this conversation, that doesn't mean that coding is no longer important for you. At senior, it absolutely remains a critical thing that you're able to do effectively. And that's a key word to use here, because sure, if you're finding that you're spending spending more time doing other things, it's been a long day. If you're finding that you're spending more time doing other things, then the reality is that you might just have to become more and more effective at your ability to code. And then John says, my previous comment didn't go through. Build utils that speed up your own processes. Yeah, exactly. I think for sure. Right. So it's a really good point, because, and I think some people don't focus on this enough, and they get frustrated where it's like, I have to do this thing and like, it's not effective, but I'm forced to do it. And it's like, yeah, but like, why aren't we having conversations about like how to make these things more effective for us? We have to step back and look at like the example that I'm kind of discussing back and forth here with John in the chat is like being able to relay status, right? The overall goal that I was describing there was that people are interested in the status of something because they need it to be able to do their part of their role effectively. High level, right? I'm not prescribing how it's done. That's just the outcome that needs to happen. Someone needs to leverage the status to do their role effectively. How does that get done? There's a million ways that we could do it. Someone might say, I'm just going to make this up. Someone might say, I need it written down in an email, and then we have to have a meeting about it, and then make sure your Jira items are updated so that everything is accurate across all these three things. And like, that's one way to convey the status. And I'm sure some people that are watching this are like, I have literally seen that and I hate it, and I hate everything about it. So it's one way to do it. It doesn't mean it's effective, but in situations like that, we need to be able to step back and say, like, what's the goal of what we're trying to do here? And if you have, I recommend people try to create environments like this where we can question this kind of thing and say like, hey, look, like this feels like it's a bit of a pain in the ass. Maybe you find better language to use. And like, so what's the goal that we're trying to accomplish? Okay, I understand you need status. Okay, what type of resolution do you need on this? How frequently? And can we have a discussion around like how we make this a little bit better for both of us? I want to understand what you need, and then we can balance that with sort of my ability to commit to that on different cadence or time intervals, right? Because if it's going to be a pain in the butt for you, you're probably not going to do it effectively. Don't trigger me, bro. Just woke up from that nightmare. Did I say the Jira word, and that's triggering? I'm sorry. I know it's a PTSD for some people. Funny enough, though, I will say this, and I know that as an engineering manager, people are going to be like, you're the problem. I actually really liked using Jira, but when I've talked about this before, I liked using Jira because it was just the central spot where, like, if we had an idea, I knew it was in Jira. If we've thought about solving a problem before, we had an idea for new feature, it doesn't matter what it is. It's like it was into Jira. It didn't mean that it went into the backlog for the next sprint every time or into the current sprint. Although being in a startup at the time, definitely saw that a lot, unfortunately. But I actually I liked Jira as a tool because I found it intuitive. Maybe that's just me, but because it was a central store of like everything that we were thinking about, it was super helpful. I work at Microsoft now, and specifically in Office 365, like in Substrate, so all the infrastructure, and it's an extremely email-heavy culture, as you might imagine, because Exchange. So email is the central source of truth for knowledge. And for me, like, that's not how my brain works. Like, I'm not heavy on email. So not having a central store like that, I don't know, like, even if we were using Azure DevOps in the same way, I think that would have been maybe a little better, but I've noticed that people really gravitate towards email. Different tools, but I don't hate Jira. Jira for the win. Also spend time creating your own utilities that allow you to work faster and smarter instead of harder. Yes, absolutely. Scrum Master wanted one field explaining what to be done in English. Sorry, in English. I know 20 comp languages and can't explain to non-techies. Yes, but John, you know that this is a critical skill, right? I know that can be frustrating depending on other people's levels of other people's technical abilities. But yeah, of course, it goes a really long way to be able to communicate things effectively. And I'm sure John is actually very good at it, but I can understand why sometimes that feels taxing. I don't blame you. Alan says, I don't mind Jira, but it can encourage over management. Yeah, for sure. And I understand why when people get triggered when they hear Jira and talking about that kind of stuff. Like I said, I liked it just because it was like, I knew how to pull information out of it because I knew we had put information in. It's just like a second brain. Devin, Devin, good to see you. I didn't realize that you dropped into the live streams. What are you saying, that having ideas scattered across Teams, Azure DevOps tasks, SharePoint, email, and random files on people's local disks might not be effective? Yeah, apparently it's not. Yeah, it's shocking. I know. Yes, Simple ASCII says, of course. No, that's awesome. Folks, we're coming up on the hour here, and I'm going to sign off. So I'm just going to do the thing I always do where I kind of go through different stuff to offer people. So hopefully this works. I'm going to go full screen. It did work. You can see me. So this is where my newsletter is, where, like I said, if you want to join next week and see, like, if you enjoyed being on the live stream, by the way, for folks on Substack, I know you can't see my screen that I'm sharing, so I apologize. It would be great if Substack actually offered streaming as a first-class thing, but I have to do it from my phone. So I'm talking about the newsletter now. If you're on Substack, you're literally where the newsletter is. So for other folks, this is, like I said at the beginning of the stream, don't subscribe to, the newsletter if you're like, I don't want to get emails and stuff. That's totally cool. If you liked the stream and you want to join next week or some other Monday in the future, weekly.devleader.ca is where you can see what the topic's going to be. It comes out on Saturday. Devin says, I always notice the notifications late, so I'm here late. You got to put it in your calendar, man. Come on. But yeah, you can check that out. So you can see on my screen, sorry if you're on Substack, but this article here, Senior Engineers Code Less, is the topic from today. If I click into it, you'll see that generally the sort of content strategy that I've been using is that I take a video from my Code Commute channel, Like I said at the beginning, it's one of the ones that had either the most engagement, like conversations, reviews. Like it seemed to get the most interest. I'll generally write my newsletter on that, and then I make the live stream about the same topic, generally. So that's the first part. I also want to mention this is the sales pitch part of the live stream, right? Gotta do it at some point. But on Dome Train, I have a bunch of courses, and if I refresh this, the new one is out. So Ryan Murphy and I just launched another course together on Dome Train. It's called Career Management for Software Engineers. So I will also put this one into the chat if you want to check that out. So the courses that I have on Dome Train are either going to be C# related, because I program in C#, or they're going to be sort of career related for software engineers. So I realize not everyone's a .NET developer. Not everyone's perfect. It's okay. Just kidding. But if you're interested in like the career side of things, and we have nailing the behavioral interview, getting promoted, the career management one. There's a soft skills one down here as well. So Ryan is a engineering manager at Yelp as well. So I'm from Microsoft, he's from Yelp. So we come together and we film half and half on these courses. So I would recommend them personally. So if you like if you watch my other videos, my tutorial style, if you like how I teach, it's the same kind of style in those videos as well. Otherwise, depending where you're joining from, my main channel is called Dev Leader on YouTube. And this is the one where the live stream is going to right now for YouTube. If I have a quick look across the top, you'll notice that my resume review series is sort of my most recent videos, but my videos on Dev Leader are edited, either tutorials or they're, say, a topic like this, but edited down so it's not just me blabbing for an hour. So something to check out if you haven't already checked out my main channel. Boom, there we go. And then the other one is my other channel, which is called Code Commute. This one is so much fun. It's kind of funny because if I just jump back for a second, if I go to, so it says there's 743 videos on this channel, but I think that's because it includes shorts. If I just go to videos, there should be like 350 or something. I don't know where the count is. But anyway, Dev Leader is a lot of work to make videos for. Especially for like programming tutorials. I have to come up with the topic. I have to create the code. I walk through the code. Don't get me wrong. I don't like dislike doing it, but like it's a lot of work. Then I have an editor edit it. I don't edit my own videos anymore. So it costs me money, right? So I lose hundreds of dollars every month basically trying to make helpful videos for people. And Code Commute is a little bit of a different story. So I started doing Code Commute because on the new team that I'm on at Microsoft, it's not mandatory by any means, but I go into the office twice a week now. And there's like one highway mostly between my home and the office. And I absolutely hate commuting. If you watch Code Commute, you might know. But I don't like commuting at all. And I kind of got to do it. So I said, hey, if I'm going to be stuck in a car, I might as well make content. So I made Code Commute as a bit of a side project, and it's really enjoyable for me. So on some days, like if I go to CrossFit in the morning and then I go to work, I'll have like 4 vlog entries. So I've been doing this since the end of last summer, kind of picked it up more in the fall, and there's already like 176 videos that are just vlog entries. So it's a lot of fun for me to make. If I just go pick let's go pick a random one. These 360 ones are super cool. So one sec. That's literally outside my house, but you can see how I can look around. So like, it has a seam, and it didn't show the room that I'm sitting in right now, but like you can literally go on YouTube and just like look around. Like you might not be able to tell, but my cursor is actually moving around in the 360 video. So it's a lot of fun. But these conversations are the ones I mentioned at the beginning that are either submitted questions in the comments, or I go to Reddit to go through topics. I-77 here is a death trap of aggro drivers. Yep. So yeah, this channel's a lot of fun. I know I've been talking on this channel a lot about being burnt out and stuff recently. And I had people saying like, "Hey, take it easy. Like, you know, you don't have to post so many videos and stuff." But I was telling people like, I actually enjoy making the videos on Code Commute. Like, it's not really what I would call work. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna keep doing them. It's a lot of fun. And the last thing, sorry, something fell in my house and distracted me. Last thing I'll jump to is called Brand Ghost. So Brand Ghost is the SaaS that I am building on the side. If you, depending on how you got to this live stream, you might see that I post a lot of stuff on social media. Brand Ghost is what I use to post everything on social media. When I started taking content creation more seriously at the start of 2023, I had a goal. I said I'm going to post 3 videos to YouTube every single week. And I've almost done that every single week. And then more recently, because I have these 2 channels, I actually post 10 to 15 videos a week on YouTube. But that's just YouTube. I post to every single social media platform multiple times per day, every single day. And I've been doing that for a couple of years now. The only way that that's possible for me is because I built Brand Ghost to help me do it. So the content that you see me posting is my content. I wrote it, or I made the pictures or made the videos or whatever, made the blog entries. But the way that it gets posted is through Brand Ghost. So it will cross post everywhere for me. And if I didn't have Brand Ghost and didn't put it together, then I wouldn't be able to make content the way that I do. So this has been something started as a bit of a passion project so that I could enable my content creation. And then I said, like, wait a second, I think there's something here, because the way that I was doing this before I started coding it in Brand Ghost was costing me about $1,200 a year to be able to post everywhere the way that I needed to do it. So I built Brand Ghost to be able to accommodate that. And sort of our goal with Brand Ghost is that we want to be able to help content creators that are getting started. So if you're like, hey, I'd be interested in making content, but like posting it is a pain in the butt. Like, I don't know anything about, like, you know, what even is Blue Sky? Like, do I have to go make another account and I have to go post it to there now too? And the idea is that we give you free scheduling and cross posting across all of these platforms. We just added Reddit. Pinterest is coming imminently. I have Substack working on a private branch that I can use. We'll do Mastodon shortly. I have a prototype for posting to Discord channels. So the whole idea is that you can make your content and then the posting you don't have to worry about. The free version lets you schedule and cross post. And in the paid for versions, you get more features like what I use for recurring content. So to explain what I mean by that is I post a lot of evergreen content, and the concept behind that, if I scroll down a little bit, we use these things called topic streams. So because I try to make as much educational content as I can, if I were to make a C# tutorial on how dictionaries work in C#, that tutorial will make sense today. It will make sense a week from now. It will probably make the same amount of sense in 5 years from now. So because I focus on writing content that isn't really timely, it's sort of timeless, it means that it can be reposted in the future. Which means that every time I create a piece of content, it's an investment for myself as a content creator. So I have enough content in some of my topic streams. I have like 20 something topic streams. I have enough content in some of them that I could, are you our new creator? Oh, I'll send that to someone. Are you our, where does it say that? Is it in a picture? Even worse. Even worse if it's in a picture. Thanks. I'll have someone look at that though. The idea is that I have enough content in some of these topic streams that if I'm having a period as a content creator where I don't have enough capacity to be creating new content, then I can take a break. So the example that I always love to go back to is last October, I think, I took a vacation with my wife to Hawaii. And I had, thanks, John. I will make sure that I check that out. In fact, I'll have someone else check that out because they do the work on the site. And I'll say, it was so embarrassing on stream. Everyone was laughing at you. But I took a vacation with my wife last October. We went to Hawaii and I had Brand Ghost running and I had over 150 social media posts that went out for the week. All content that I had written. I did not manually schedule a single one of those posts. I also got very lucky that week and I had my most viral post ever. I think I had like over 2 million impressions on LinkedIn or something. A meme that went out, so it was pretty cool. But all of that was hands off, right? I spent the time creating the content. Brand Ghost posted it for me. So if you are interested in starting to get going with content creation, you can try Brand Ghost totally for free. I will put it into the chat. And if you're taking content creation more seriously, like I said, this is what I built to enable myself to create content the way that I do. And hello, Maria. Good to see you. It's been a while. I hope you're doing very well. I'm sorry that I'm literally about to wrap up the stream. So I appreciate you dropping in, though. I know it's been a little while since we've chatted, though. So, oh, look, I'm trying to block whoever that is. Boop, out of my chat. Cool. Okay, so thanks so much for being here, folks. Sorry, Maria, for ending as soon as you joined. But if you are interested in joining next week, same time next week on Monday, so 7 p.m. Pacific is when I start. Go for about an hour. When I am... The stream will likely go a little bit longer when I'm sort of out of this bit of burnout phase and some of the stuff that I'm doing for work. So thanks for being patient with that as I make progress on that. And otherwise, during the week, make sure to check out Code Commute. That's where you'll see all of my fun stuff going on for the week. I didn't put a link to that, did I? I didn't put a link to Code Commute. Here you go, coming in the chat. Boom. Okay. Again, thanks, folks, for being here. Sorry for everyone on Substack that can't see my screen or see the links and stuff I'm sharing. I know it's a pain in the ass, but I'm sure Substack will catch on soon and do this properly. So thank you, everyone. I'll see you next time. Take care.